Welcome to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private.
Hey everyone, my name's Oliver and I'm a former addict in recovery. Welcome back to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private. The Recovery Cast is a podcast created by people in recovery from addiction for people in recovery from addiction. There are many definitions of addiction, but we keep it simple. Addiction to us is when people use alcohol, drugs, or certain behaviours repetitively to their detriment. Basically when it's a problem for them and their families. Therefore, an addict is not necessarily someone using a needle in a dark laneway, and an alcoholic is not necessarily a homeless man in a park. Recovery for us means using an active daily process or program to deal with alcohol use disorder, substance use disorder, or other behavioural addictions. People in recovery are committed to complete abstinence. This daily process is as important to being able to live normal lives as daily dialysis is for people with kidney problems. This podcast is meant as a support tool for those in recovery. I myself am a drug addict in recovery. However, each day we will focus on a different perspective of recovery. Everyone who participates in the podcast is in an active recovery program. We are not affiliated with any one recovery methodology and will focus on a variety of different types of recovery, including 12-step recovery programs such as Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and other things like Smart Recovery, Celebrate Recovery, Recovery Dharma, Cognitive Behavioural Therapy, and more. And a quick disclaimer, this podcast is intended to be informative. A podcast alone cannot support your sobriety and recovery, so we suggest it only as one component of a daily recovery routine. For more information on what recovery is, please go to www.rehab.melbourne. We've got a really interesting episode planned for you today. We're talking about a couple of different things. But first, we are going to look at the Alcoholics Anonymous Daily Reflections reading for November the 15th, which is entitled, what is it entitled? It's about prayer and meditation. It's entitled Vital Sustenance. Those of us who have come to make regular use of prayer would no more do without it than we would refuse air, food, sunshine. And for the same reason, when we refuse air, light, or food, the body suffers. And when we turn away from meditation and prayer, we likewise deprive our minds, our emotions, and our intuitions of vitally needed support. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 97. Step 11 doesn't have to overwhelm me. Conscious contact with God can be as simple and as profound as conscious contact with another human being. I can smile, I can listen, I can forgive. Every encounter with another is an opportunity for prayer, for acknowledging God's presence within me. Today, I can bring myself a little closer to my higher power. The more I choose to seek the beauty of God's work in other people, the more certain of His presence I will become. So this is, it's based on step 11, which we will get to in my investigation of the steps series. I just want to talk briefly about it. So prayer and meditation, for me, what they do is they bring my stress levels down, and it brings me back into the present and reminds me that everything will be okay. That's pretty much the role of what prayer and meditation is for me. I have to seek some kind of guidance, and prayer helps me pray for the guidance that I need to get through my day. It's interesting how they're talking about encountering other people and how that's an opportunity to tune into a higher power. I'll tell you a very quick personal story about what my higher power is. I mean, it's a God of your understanding, so you've got to work it out for yourself. But for me, I've done that. I've worked it out for myself. And my higher power is is basically the present moment and everything that is in just my consciousness and in the universe. So it's everything for me, but it's definitely the present moment, and it's heavily rooted in the present moment. I can't particularly explain it very well, to be honest, because I sort of lose the ability to grasp what it is with words. It's just something that I believe in. And like the moment I start trying to describe it to you, I kind of miss the point anyway. But for me, I discovered what I think my higher power is when I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, that unmanifested, which is what he talks about in it. If you haven't read it, I really encourage you to. What he talks about is the unmanifested, and it's sort of like the now, it's the moment, and it's everything that is. So because other people are part of everything that is, other people and the people I meet during my day are actually part of what my higher power is as well. So when I'm encountering other people and have conscious contact with with other human beings, I smile, I listen, and I forgive. And it's almost a kind of opportunity for prayer that I have, where I'm brought into the present when I'm engaging with someone. So whether it be, I don't know, we've had my sister on the show. I love sort of the feeling I get when I spend time with my family, because it brings me really into the present and anchors me into what is right now in this moment as I'm focusing on them and their just being, around them and the experience of communicating with them. I think that's basically what I'm trying to get at. So prayer and meditation, they're so important. When I pray and when I meditate, my stress levels go down. It means that I'm just a little bit more relaxed and things during my day go a lot smoother. And I think I encourage, really, I think prayer and meditation is really, really important in recovery, because without it, I would just be a little bit uncomfortable all the time. And that is quite literally the feelings that I used on. I was uncomfortable in my own skin. I was really not spiritually fit. I wasn't spiritually switched on, and I was just sort of going through my life, living in the past, living for the future, but not anchored in the present, which is what my higher power is. So when I'm in tune with my higher power, I don't have that uncomfortability anymore, and I can be present and be sort of just like a leaf floating down the river of like my life. I just go with the flow. I accept things. I have acceptance and gratitude, and that's where it comes from for me. I love it. So now we're going to get back to enough of this sort of, it's a bit of a look at step 11, which we will talk about on another episode. I actually want to talk about step number 8, which is we made, we made a list of all those people who we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So that's the 8th step of the 12 steps. We made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all from the book. That's verbatim. Some people find it really scary, but I'll tell you a story about how step 8 was really transformative for me. But first, I think we should do a little bit of, get some information from the actual 12-step fellowships themselves, which the one I'm going to read from is from the Green and Gold book, which is the Step Working Guide from Narcotics Anonymous. And step 8 goes like this. To this point, the steps have focused mostly on repairing ourselves and our relationship with a God of our understanding. Beginning with the 8th step, we bring other people into the healing process. People we harmed in our addiction, people we harmed in our recovery, people we meant to harm, people we hurt by accident, people who are no longer in our lives, and people we expect to be close to for the rest of our lives. The 8th step is about identifying the damage we caused. It doesn't matter whether we caused it because we were overtaken by rage, carelessness, or because we were afraid. It doesn't matter whether our actions were based in selfishness, arrogance, dishonesty, or any other defect. It doesn't even matter that we didn't intend to cause someone harm. All the damage we caused is material for the 8th step. So what they're saying is whenever somebody was harmed, that's fair game for the 8th step, and we become ready to make amends to the people that we had harmed. And it says further, it may turn out that some of the harm we did can't be repaired. It may turn out that we ourselves can't directly make the repair. It may even turn out that we're not responsible for something we've placed on our 8th step list. Our sponsor will help us sort that out before we go on to the 9th step. For now, our task is only to identify who we harmed and what the harm was and become willing to make amends. So, yeah, we're going to talk about my experience of that after the break.
You're listening to the Recovery Cast by Hills and Rangers Private. Now playing daily on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. For more shows, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.
So, you're with Oliver on the Recovery Cast, and I was just talking about my experience of Step 8. Step 8 is not actually the one where we actually go out and make amends to people actively. That is Step 9. So this step sets the groundwork for us to basically make a list of the people that we had harmed and then go about the act of becoming ready to make amends to them and becoming willing. My sponsor, when I did Step 8, sat me down and said, all right, all the people that you had harmed. So some of the people that I had harmed actually came up in my 5th step. When I wrote the list of all the people I didn't like, the people I had a resentment against, and then worked out what my defects were, I actually realised that my defects had harmed those people. So some of them were on my list of people to make amends with, but also a lot of them weren't. So I had to make amends. Some of the people I made amends to a workplace that I'd stolen from. I made amends to friends that I had stolen from. So I harmed them in terms of like monetary or the stealing of drugs or just through my own selfishness and the fact that my addiction always won out in my relationships. I made amends to partners that I had in the past who I'd harmed, and I made amends to I think I've talked about it before, to a pay-as-you-feel restaurant that I never paid anything to when I was spending all my money on drugs. So there's a lot of, that's just scratching the surface. There are a lot of people. And also somebody who bullied me in high school who I've talked about. I started to write this list and I realised that there are a lot of people on that list that I needed to make amends to. And as it says in this little blurb at the beginning of the 8th step in the step working guide, it says it may turn out that we ourselves can't directly make the repair. It may even turn out that it's something we're not responsible for. Basically, some things I couldn't make an amends to. There was a person who, this is really, I'm opening up here and I'm getting a bit vulnerable because it's hard to admit, But there was somebody, I started a job in early recovery that I actually got fired from because my head was all over the place. And to be honest, it was hospitality, so it wasn't something that I really wanted to do. I think my heart wasn't in it, and I was suffering from some pretty serious anxiety just due to the fact that, hospitality is really hard work and it's under the pump. And if you're anxious or an anxious kind of person or in early recovery, maybe it's not the best thing. That's all hindsight now. But anyway, I got fired from this job through something that wasn't necessarily my fault. It was just some misunderstandings. And I was so angry that I actually keyed somebody's car who worked for that job. And I told my sponsor about it. And he said, look, if you go and admit to that person that you keyed their car and say, I did this and I'm, responsible for it and I'm happy to do whatever it takes to make it right. You might get punched in the mouth, basically. And we worked out that it was actually better for me to just simply make the amends by completely not behaving in that way again. So what I had to do was I had to become willing to make an ongoing amends, that no matter how angry I got at somebody, not even just keying cars, but I'm talking about in general, I will never lash out or be physically violent or verbally violent to someone when they do something that I don't like. And that's really, that's healing from that defect of control as well. It furthers that, but also it makes me feel like I've actually grown through the experience. It makes me feel like I no longer engage in that sort of behavior anymore. And that's where it's a healing process for me. And I had to become willing. That was a really hard thing to do, because in the heat of the moment when I get angry, I spent years not being responsible for my own emotions and my own behavior, and now I have to be. So that's where that comes in. The other one was the business that the workplace that I stole from. I actually used to work at a bottle shop. This was years and years ago. And I used to, take slabs or wine or spirits out the back, leave it by the fence out the back of the shop, and then on my way home from the shift, I'd pick it up and just steal it, basically. It was theft from the workplace. And I sort of did a rough calculation of like the monetary value of what I stole, and it would have been a lot. It would have been like thousands of dollars worth. That was one that I was really, really afraid and apprehensive of becoming willing to make amends to that business. In the 8th step, we realize that sometimes we have to become willing to make amends, even when it means that it will actually sort of have a recourse, and we have to own up and take responsibility for what we did. And my sponsor at the time, who I've had on the show, John, he said, don't think about what the consequences will be. You have to own up to this. It's not physically dangerous to you. It might mean that you have to pay for what you stole or something like that, And so I went about my 8th step just by praying for the willingness to make amends to the boss. And that was the groundwork. And I'm really looking forward to telling you the story about how that went on my 9th step, but I'm not going to reveal it now, because I'm going to leave the 9th step for another one, another episode. The 8th step is that groundwork phase. So it's much like actually step 6, where we become willing to have God remove our defects of character. This is, we become willing to make amends to all the people we had harmed. So it's sort of like psyching yourself up for the main event, really. I'm going to read some more from this. I'm going to give you an example of a couple of the questions that we have to answer when we are doing the Narcotics Anonymous 12 steps. So the one for step 8, the first one is, am I hesitating in any way about working the 8th step, and why? That's so funny, because I was very hesitant to do that, and the reason was because I was afraid. I was living in fear, and that's another one of my defects. So I had to pray for that to be removed, and pray for the courage to, change the things I can, as they say in the Serenity Prayer. That's something that I could change, so I had to. The second question is, do I realize the need to slow down and consult my sponsor before making amends? Have I created more harm in any situation by rushing out to make amends before I was ready, and what was the situation? So that's really cool, because when I got into recovery, I was hell-bent on, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go out and I'm going to undo all the damage that I did, and I'm going to show everybody that, Oliver is in recovery and Oliver's good now, and I'm going to look really cool, because they'll think, oh, that Oliver guy, he was really messed up before, and now look at him, he's amazing. And it came from a place of ego. And what I really needed to do was, yes, I needed to stop and just take it one day at a time and let it happen, not under my self-will, but under the will of my higher power. And that was, slow down, consult my sponsor before making the amends, and work out the best way to do it. Because the reality is that actually we can harm other people when we make amends. So if we rush out and do it, we might actually be harming them. I can't say of any situations where I actually harmed someone from making the amends. I think the amends were mutually beneficial, where I cleared things up and was able to go about the rest of my life with, a little bit less weight of my own guilt and shame. But there are instances where people have been hurt physically by us, and if we turn up at their house and say, hey, it's me, the guy who, injured you in a fight, or something like that, we may actually be causing the other person great harm. To have somebody who assaulted you or, something like that turn up in your life again after what could be years, it might be really triggering and really upsetting. So we do have to be careful. Another one is the resentments that are in the way of my willingness to make amends. So for me, I had to think about, I really hate that. Well, I thought I hated that person who bullied me in high school. That was the way I felt before I did my 4th and 5th step. But the reality is that I realized I had a part to play in that entire situation as well. And I had to let go of that resentment and see my part in it. And it got out of the way of my willingness to make amends. And I've already told you about that experience of where the person who used to bully me in high school actually apologized to me, and then I apologized to them, and I instantly felt amazing. Another one is, are there any people to whom I owe amends who may be a threat to my safety or about who I'm truly concerned in some way? What are my fears? So I don't know how many questions there are. There's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 plus questions in step 8. And it just lays the groundwork, and it really sets you up for a huge amount of just preparedness for the 9th step. It's not something you want to go about and do in a half-hearted way. It's really, really important. And what I would suggest for the people who are listening, if you are not up to step 8, don't sweat it. Don't worry. We didn't become addicted in a day, and we're not going to recover in a day either. Focus on wherever you're at, whatever is going on for you. Just sit with that. And if you're unsure, if any of this sort of stuff has brought up questions, I really, really suggest you speak to the staff at Hills and Ranges Private. Jump on the website www.rehab.melbourne and ask them about it. All of the members of staff have personal lived experience. They understand about the steps. They've done them themselves. They're practicing them. They work them. If you have any questions, just get in touch, because it's a big journey, recovery, and sometimes it's not about sort of the entire mountain that we have to sort of climb in order to be in recovery and to start that journey. The most important thing is that you just take that first step. And I want to really reiterate that and make sure everybody understands that. What I'm doing is I'm just sharing my experience with my recovery and showing you that it can be done no matter who you are, and that it's so rewarding. Step 8 and 9 was like taking a huge, huge weight off my back, and I felt lighter. So, bit of an insight into step 8. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Recovery Cast, proudly brought to you by Hills and Ranges Private. I really look forward to sharing my step 9 experiences on another episode very soon. But until then, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take it easy, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Recovery Cast. For more, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.